Hey guys, welcome back to more AFK Arena. In today's video, we have a bit of a treat. We do have Arty on. Now, Arty is, as always, is a wealth of knowledge. I will leave a link to his Reddit. Go support him over there. It does a lot of the posts. The most notable one was probably those team guides that we looked at probably 6 months ago now, but like real in-depth guides to all the teams. Does fantastic work. More knowledgeable than me at the game, which is why we've got him on here to talk about the engravings and some priorities engravings and how they're performing in the end game and stuff like that. So, Arty, welcome. Anything you want to say?
Just thank you for having me on. I'm glad we get to talk about some engravings and help inform some people who have been pretty empty on knowledge about it so far.
Definitely. There's definitely, we were talking before about engravings, and something that I wanted to mention that I did mention in my Mishka video is like, even though some engravings are good and they buff the character a lot, if the character still doesn't make it into meta, it sort of still makes the engraving bad, which is kind of sad because there's some really unique engravings that have cool effects that look fun. But unfortunately, those characters are bad, things like Thane and Walker, so they don't actually get involved in it. So keep in mind, a lot that we will be looking at will be already powerful heroes, and it's just adding to that power that they already have. So the first one we're going to look at is Irons. Give us a walkthrough. What you feel on Irons?
Irons right now is just kind of one of your staple meta carries. He has been for a while. He had a period where he was falling off, but then some newer releases, Mortis, not Leonardo, yeah, Leonardo Da Vinci, both have helped him out a lot in his carry potential. So he's just he's stuck in the meta. I don't think he's leaving for at least a little bit. So his engraving, just giving him more damage scaling in general, has just let him continue to smash through all of his enemies.
Yeah, and do you think that it's necessary? Like, especially with Leonardo, like if Leonardo can imprison enemies and then get that damage increase, do you think that this 60 is overkill?
I think the 60 is overkill. I don't think that 30 and some upgrades from 30 are. One thing you're going to see for a lot of like maximizing your engraving value is that you're going to go to like 36 or like 41 or somewhere in that threshold where you maximize some of the stats on your engravings,
Yeah.
but you don't go fully up for the skill.
Yeah, definitely. And he also does get that crit damage amplification on his bonus, plus all the skills in the actual tree that you're looking at. Is going to be a bonus as well, because that's definitely something else to look at. It's not just the abilities that you get, it is all those stats that you're soaking up as well. So Iron's pretty much just in there because and like you said, he was sort of falling out. I remember last time we spoke, you said he was like sort of the worst of the best 5 carries. But definitely with those extra introductions, I feel like he's sort of stabilized the position now. Is that your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say he's definitely kind of fighting in like your middle region. He's not your worst carry, but he's definitely not your best still.
Yep, 100%. Okay, so next one we're looking at is going to be Lucretia. If I can get up to her somewhere, there she is. Now, Lucretia, as soon as engravings came out, I just like even though it was only Hypergenes that came out first, I just assumed Lucretia is a safe bet to engrave because she's a 1 unit team, so buffing that 1 unit team essentially is always going to be powerful. Obviously, when you get to the later game, you do need some synergies with her, but she is the main damage, so buffing that main damage is always going to be relevant. Is that pretty much just the gist there?
There's really no downside to ever engraving her. She's good in like every mode of the game. She just has high damage, high scaling. She keeps on getting new tools like dual divinity. She's not losing anything, and she just keeps getting better and better.
Pretty much 100%. Now, we'll go through the rest of these top priorities, and then we'll go through what order you would do them in. So the next one we're going to take a look at is another very meta relevant hero, and that is going to be Odin. Take it away. Obviously, the 30 is a really boring one, only getting a bit of a damage increase. But I think that, once you scale up the attack increase buff that he does get, it's actually a significant amount.
Yeah, Odin is a character who scales off of a multitude of very small numbers. If you look at like his signature item and his furniture, they look very unimpressive at first, but with how many skills Odin casts constantly, every little bit adds up, and the stats off the engraving, plus just Odin in general, tends to make a very significant jump.
Yeah.
It's not usually going to be your first choice for an engraving, but he is never a bad option, and an E60 really doesn't hurt on him.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing with Odin is I feel like you can put him a bit lower on the list of priorities because a lot of the time now, like Odin does do massive damage, but normally in the teams he's functioning in, it's not more about just getting that damage out. So even though he is increasing his damage with this, it's not sort of the win condition of the team. So not as much of a priority. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, his damage isn't often what's going to carry a team. It's going to be his CC off of his extremely high haste and portal.
Yeah.
His damage is often very relevant. He's probably going to match Grizzle a lot of the time or your other carries, but his damage is not your primary win condition.
Yeah. And even though we are getting that extra bit of haste on him, he's normally functions pretty well because you're normally bringing him with a fairly balanced team to help him out. But yeah, Odin's just an absolute beast. I've enjoyed Odin since he came into the game. To the portals, and then the fact that he gets that extra void lightning as well, and then the energy, like you said, it's just a bunch of little things that just all add up, and like the energy draining aspect, there's just so much that adds to him. But once again, one of those ones, good hero. Adding anything to him is going to be beneficial. Next one we got Raku, my man, the coolest dude in town. Give us a roundup.
Raku so far has just, ever since his release, he's been like good, and even better. He's been fantastic with CC teams and campaign. He's proven himself in bossing. He's just found a home in many different spots just through his passive and everything else in his kit. His damage is extremely high, and then engraving him will just boost his damage further, boost his, I believe it's his immunity.
Yep.
He just gets stronger and stronger slowly. There's just no real downside to him because his damage cap is super high and his base damage is already ridiculous.
Yep, 100%.
The only way that his engraving would be bad is if he had a chance of falling off, but I don't think right now he's looking at going away anyway.
Yeah, when you can deal percentage max health damage to the whole enemy team, you're pretty much safe in that sort of aspect. And yeah, we're getting a 20% increase onto his self buff. And like, I mean, that in itself at a 30, I think his one's a really nice one just for 30 as well, because 30 is, a low investment, not as crazy. So if you're using him as a carry, I really do like that as just like a early option in it, because you do get lots of, a lot more of them than you do to the 60s. But Raku, yeah, cool dude. Plus he does get the crit damage amplification, which doesn't really matter. This is the funny thing about Raku. I feel like he just wants as much haste as possible and attack speed, and that's pretty much the main gist. Like, crit damage amplification isn't really coming into play because you're scaling off of the HP. But he's just. I've just really enjoyed watching Raku come into the game and join in the meta, because he was that hero that I loved the design and always hoped he would get somewhere, and that signature item was just perfect when he actually got in with it. Now with this signature item, because you're more of a numbers guy, this is just a bit of a side topic. How much does he normally cap out his damage in like high deficits? Like he won't be doing 15%?
He normally does, but he attacks so fast and his damage is already really high, so you don't even like notice it that much. Usually when you play with a Raku team, you play on manual, that way he's only auto-attacking.
Yeah.
So if you just lock down a team with like a Mahira ult, 2 Mahira ults, you're going to kill the whole team.
Yeah.
Like, there's very rare circumstances where you're not going to do enough damage, no matter what if it caps or not.
100%. And now I played another game, I can't even remember what it was, had a really cool feature, which I hope AFK Arena will bring in, which is, you got your 5 characters down the bottom. Each of them had their own auto button on top of them. So you could turn one character off auto and have the rest on if you wanted. That is a feature I would love to see, because I feel like we keep getting more heroes that are beneficial to play on manual, but it's just really tedious and annoying to try and play it on manual. So I think that kind of feature would be sick if we could get something like that implemented. I mean, they did the Rosaline thing. Fingers crossed.
I've wanted that for so long, and it has never come.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so the next one we have on this top priorities is one that you personally are not a fan of, if I can find the dude, and that is Krenn. Talk to me about why Krenn's good and why you're not a big fan.
Krenn himself, I think, is a good character. He's fantastic in tower. His damage is very high. He has a lot of CC. The issue is he just dies. He just dies, and there's too many heroes right now who counter him in campaign and in other ways. He can't hit anyone on your half of the map when he's ulting, and that is such a massive downside for a character who can't do anything besides hit the enemy side in his ult.
Yep.
His E30, it's actually pretty good. I think it's actually a pretty good buff to a pretty moderate hero. It gives him his ult much faster because you usually are landmining 1-2 heroes. That's a giant bump in energy. The issue is all these other heroes count. You got your Kelther, your Tassi, basically every hero who can move around or has CC immunity or any kind of immunity just totally destroys any chance of him carrying the stage.
Yep. To me, Krenn is that one in this list that actually has the best engravings in terms of buffing his gameplay. However, just due to general factors of him falling off a little bit, due to all those things you talked about, he's not the top priority in that sense, because I just feel like these two both synergize really well. This one, his biggest issue, like for a lot of times, is trying to find a formation where he doesn't instantly die when he runs in to do his knockback. So getting damage reduction on that is like really practical for him. And then with Krenn as well, like you want to ult as fast as possible because that's how you start getting the cycle going. Because once he ults once, he sort of endlessly ults is pretty much the gist when I've played him of how I see it. And getting that ult earlier by recovering some energy. You know, if you can pop 3 bombs early on in the team you've got built, and you get 300 extra energy, he's ulting that much faster to add to his win condition. But like you said, it's more of the general factor of Krenn having a hard time finding the matchups. If he does find a good matchup, he's pretty solid, but it's just the matchups get harder. And I think as well, like you've noticed that in the later game, there becomes more bad matchups. Like in like chapter 25 to 30, there's a lot of teams that aren't that threatening to Krenn. Like the matchups just seem to get really worse for him as the later the game goes. Is that the vibe?
Yeah, as you're going like you're 30, 35, 36, 37, he's usually pretty good. But as you're moving into 38 onwards, you're starting to fight these heroes like Ulna, Eluard. You eventually get into like Ainz and Albedo become enemies. And all these characters, Krenn just can't do enough damage to get through, whereas CC just doesn't work on.
Yep.
He might be a great investment for some times. You just have to be careful with how far you push him.
Yep, definitely. So that was your list of the top priority ones. What order?
We may have forgot Grizzle.
Oh, I did forget Grizzle. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I suck at that. So let's add Grizzle in there. Obviously, Grizzle, one of the best carries as well. What's your reasoning behind Grizzle?
He's just meta everywhere. He's campaign. Yep. He's meta on bosses. He's good and twisted. Good in this. What is it? Cursed Realm. He's basically good everywhere that you want him to be. So there's really no downside to putting investment into him. His skills aren't that bad either. Extra shield value means extra damage off of it.
Yep.
More tankiness means he lives longer without Ulna or anyone else. He's just good.
Yep. Do you think that he might be one where it's once again overkill? Because I feel like when you have him and Ulna, like it's a pretty solid team that has a pretty high win ratio. Would you agree, or would you say it's still worth getting him done?
A lot of stages eventually start having either damage problems because Odin Grez becomes your damage, and sometimes you don't have enough to kill like a Thorin or something.
Yep.
Or your Grez has to live when Ulna can't trigger their immunity the second time.
Yeah.
Or if like Ulna dies and doesn't get the second immunity. So I think at least for the defensive stats as well as the mild damage, it's worth it.
Yep, definitely. So from those guys, what would be your order on what you would do in the optimal world when people are building optimally? What would your order of priority be for those guys?
I think you want to boost your least potent carries or your carries who are going to use it the best. So I think Ainz is going to be your first priority solely because a lot of his support isn't going to be built right away.
Yep.
Like you're probably not going to have all of your dimensionals up and ready by that point, so he's probably going to need the extra help. Whereas a hero like Lucretia will probably do well.
Yeah, especially in a world where people are starting now, where you don't have all of the dimensionals, so you've got to garrison them all, and that takes a lot of time. And then there's a lot of investment in like upgrading, Albedo to 30, then Ainz to 30, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, otherwise, Grizzle, whenever you've got him up and ready, he's just always a good option.
Yeah.
I think you're probably going to do Ainz into like your Grez or Odin, and then after that, you're going to look at Raku. I don't think Raku comes before those two just because his teams aren't as potent.
Yeah.
You kind of also need Windbinder up.
Yep. And then obviously Lucretia after that, just because Lucretia's so powerful in itself. But I feel
Yeah.
like for a lot of people as well, if you're not too fast and you're not trying to absolutely push the limit and you've built a Lucretia and you're having fun with it, because that was my case, I just put it straight into Lucretia because she's not a bad option.
Yeah, just do it.
But yeah, I definitely think that like balancing out your teams once you're in multi-fights is the way to go.
Yeah, there's no reason to put, if you've already got like a team of Grizzle, Ulna, and like your normal backline that's just killing it, and you've got a Raku team struggling, don't put it into the Odin, put it into the Raku.
Yep, 100%. All right, so the middle end, let's go through that. The first one you've got on this list is going to be Zul'Rath. Hit me up.
Yeah, Zul'Rath is just, he's a pretty solid staple right now inside most of your charm teams. A lot of your higher end charm sets are going to be like Zul'Rath, Rowan, Mahira, Rosa, and then you get like a Raku or a Zul'Rath or some other fifth slot.
Yep.
And Zul'Rath actually decently often has to do damage. Especially if you're fighting into like a Brutus or a character with immunity shields, Zul'Rath is your way to get around that.
Yep.
So him having more investment as well as being able to tank longer is generally very significant for that team.
Now,
he's also great.
You keep going. You go.
So he's also great in PvP. He's got a lot of good applications there. However, he is not usually your win condition. He's not what's going to immediately change the fight. He's something that is more of a support and a follow-up.
Yep, 100%. Now, do you think you're investing in him? Like the 30 is nice because you're actually getting a decent buff out of it because you're also getting a percentage increase on what you can stack. Do you think the rest is more for stats? Because the 60 sounds really nice. After time turned back, he's immune to control effects for the following 12 seconds. Do you think that comes into play a hell of a lot? Or do you think normally he's popping his ult before he would get CC'd? Because I just find he gets hit so hard early in games and he's normally not getting CC'd before he's getting hit so hard that he ults.
The only place where that plus 60 skill is really relevant are going to be super niche stages where maybe he's like into a Nara and you get to immune the Nara hook, or it's just in PvP. In PvP is the only major spot where that's going to play a spot. Yep,
definitely. All right, who have we got next? Pharah. Let's jump over to Pharah if I can find him. Here we go. Now, I personally really liked Pharrell's one. I just see a 4-second stun on the 30 as being a really strong one if you're using Pharrell anyway. It like 1 second doesn't sound like much, but when 1 second is 33% of what you already had, it actually sounds a lot better. That's just my personal vibe with him. And then we also do get the extra duration of 7 seconds. Both of these, when in Pharrell, I just feel like just add to his reliability. Is that the general vibe you feel?
That is the general vibe. There's a lot of things where Pharah was rated really, really highly when we saw it right away, which is kind of where some people will put him as like top tier, whereas his stun, it's only getting the extra time if 2 enemies are already dead.
Yep.
And then the spirit, the extra time's pretty good, but your 2 seconds on those spirits aren't super significant.
Yeah,
it is a good buff to a good hero, but I don't think it's as game-changing as a lot of people may think it is.
And also, he's not a win condition most of the time, so you want to prioritize those things that are going to have the most impact on your team before you look into something like this. Is that the feel as well?
Yeah, you're definitely going to push into your carries, into your win conditions before you're going to put something into your support.
Yep. And then we have Sylas, who's another one that you've also said that you're not the biggest fan of. His 30, yeah. I'm not a huge fan of his 30. Like, it's just one of those boring number increases. It's a little bit of an increase. Like, percentage-wise, it's a decent increase, but it's not the most impactful ability. But yeah, what's your feel?
It's, very similar, where it's kind of like Pharah, where it's a good buff, good hero, but not what you want to do first. You're not going to put him to your 30 or 60 before any of these other heroes that we listed. Yeah. I think his 60 is actually pretty good. I've heard some people who have said that it stacks with other clouds. I don't know about that. I haven't been able to test it. That would actually be interesting. I haven't been able to test it because I'm not going to give him that investment yet. I think he is a good character, but at the same time, he has to fight with the Zera inside of a lot of Graveborn teams. So an investment into him also means that you kind of have to struggle there.
Yep, 100%. All right, let's keep going. Let's go on to Athalia. Let's take a look. Now, Athalia, is this more of a PvP scenario?
Yeah, Athalia is generally a PvP and kind of like Abyssal Expedition investment. She herself, like at least her plus 30 is not very relevant. It's a cool little stat buff. The plus 6 or the E60 is pretty nice. It's a really good damage buff, helps in your PvP, helps you burst down Ions and other characters. But realistically, if you're using her in campaign, don't put any engraving into her. You're just gonna use Divinity, have her mitigate some damage when she's on the enemy side of the map, and just call it good.
Yeah. So more of a PvP focus for those trying to push in the arena. On the Athalia, that's pretty much my general vibe. I feel like Athalia is just one of those ones where remember when the game first came out and it was like everyone's like, get Athalia, she's like overpowered, and then it's like, no, she's really just a niche PvP unit now. So we'll just leave it at that. But
people would re-roll for days for her.
Yeah,
people would re-roll for actual days to get an Athalia.
You don't know what's funny? My first ever pull on my first ever account was a Brutus and an Athalia. My first ever 10 pull.
I'll one up you. When I first started out, I got a Shamira Aziz Athalia pull.
Damn, on your first 10 pull?
On my first 10 pull.
Jesus, I thought I had the best first 10 pull. That's godly. That is godly. And like, cause I pulled like because like back then it was like everyone loved Brutus as well. Brutus was like the man. So I was like so pumped when I just like first opened the game and then looked online at like a tier list and it was like Brutus was top and so was Athalia. I'm like, I'm overpowered. This is just game over. Then you realize Brutus is actually kind of more just niche. Like he's not just overpowered. All right, next one. Leonardo Da Vinci. What you got to say?
Leonardo Da Vinci, he's kind of proven himself in Iron sets as of recently. He's a character who uses the artifact Winged Warden really well, because what he can do is he can start on the front line, and then as an enemy hits him, he'll steal their energy and health regen. So he will ult faster and ult enough before Ainz will ult to get the CC and the extra damage going. And with his engraving, it's going to let him immediately use his little horn blast. I have no idea what the name of the ability is.
Renaissance cannon. There you go. I got it. I struggled with that one.
Oh, there we go. But it lets him put up the extra CC. It gets you off usually an extra stun, so you're getting another 3-6 seconds sometimes to keep Ainz alive.
Yep.
It's just a good boost.
With that one, you're not really taking advantage of the 30 when you've got him in the front row, because normally he's gonna teleport before he does his first cannon. Is that correct?
Yep.
So it's more you've got two different uses out of him. Put him in the front row and get that, or if you have him in the back row, he can take advantage of, if he does get hit, he gets a free cannon eventually in the match.
Yeah, he'll get slotted in either area, so it's generally just a good boost to have for the scenarios where he's needed. Again, it's not your top priority. He's more of a support-ish hero, so it's not your immediate investment, but it's just a good investment for a character who's proven himself to be good.
Yeah, and I think the 60 is really nice because obviously it says like he's moving to the furthest away part of the battlefield, but sometimes he moves to like the back end of the enemy side, and then sometimes it's really clunky, that ability, in my opinion. So having that damage reduction can actually be nice sometimes on the 60 as well.
It takes a lot of moving around of stuff. It's like a reverse Gorvo, where he's, instead of going to the biggest area, he's going to go to the lowest area, which can sometimes be behind an enemy Tassi.
Yep. He's one of those ones, like it's just funny playing with him. You just gotta like just swapping your formation with like one character can completely change everything, because it changes the way they run in to where he goes. Like this time now he's going to go behind an ally and then he's safe, and it's just a very interesting one, that's for sure. So that's Leonardo Da Vinci. Next up, we have my man that I've been thoroughly enjoying, Zapharel. Let's see if I can find the dude, the scumbag himself. What's your vibe?
It's primarily a PvP investment. In PvE, he's not your primary damage source. Sometimes he can be good with like those niche Flora disruption sets, where you're like using a Zolrath to stop a Flora from going up right away.
Yep.
But generally, it's just a good PvP investment. He's just a good character for that game mode. Otherwise, if you're looking at him in PvE, there's no real use to the engraving. You're more so just gonna want your basic stats on him, your 30 and your +9, just for all the disruption.
Yep. Definitely, yeah, because that's sort of. And do you find at higher scaling, we're just getting into general Zapharel talk, but do you find at higher scaling his damage capacity really gets reduced and he's more that stun bot, or do you still find him being used as like a main damage source in teams?
He is not a main damage source. There is one niche with him more recently that's popped up that's kind of fun, though, is sometimes with or without Kelfer, you can use Zaph because his Thundercloud after his death will still damage enemies. So you can use him inside of Thorn and Cheese sets to trigger any kind of like Tossy, Kelfer enemy effects. So he's kind of found a spot there, but otherwise, he's an okay CC bot for just kind of all your teams.
Yep, definitely. All right, next one we are moving on to is going to be Stitchy. Let's check him out. Where is he? Where's Stitchy at? There he is. Take it away.
Damon, one thing that people kind of have both seen and not seen, depending on how far into the community you look, is that Damon has started to fall off pretty significantly. Everyone kind of praised him as a top 5 carry. Now he's kind of down that list with Krenn, where he's not your immediate carry. He's kind of a good option on some stages. And given that he's, I'd say, a little bit less viable than Krenn right now, his engraving is a little bit less viable than Krenn.
Yep.
It's okay. It's not great, but it's all right.
Yep. And just on that, what do you think it is that made him drop out? Because when Damon came, he was like the everything in the game. Like everyone like couldn't speak more about Damon. He was like the best, like that scaling plus the tankiness, the stat stealing. What sort of pushed him out in your opinion?
I'd say it's probably primarily the lack of built into his kit. Most of your other carries have like your Ainz has your team-wide stun. Your Luke just kind of doesn't care, but she does have a lot of stuns.
Yeah.
Your Raku plays in an infinite team and just has faster damage than Damon. So most of your other carries just do more damage or they just have better tankiness.
Yep.
Whereas Damon, he's a great well-rounder. He kind of does a little bit of everything, but he doesn't excel enough in one area.
Not kind of like, whereas like something like Grizzle has that extra tankiness as such because he has those skeletons that are just distracting enemies and all that sort of stuff. Whereas
Grizzle has the tankiness, the distraction, he scales off the enemy attack too, whereas Damon needs to kill someone to get that attack scaling.
Yep, definitely. But still like a really good early mid game, like
absolutely
early investment. But yeah, for the like, and that's the thing. If Damon somehow comes back into meta, he'd probably be up there in those top priorities. But just because he's out of the meta, he sits down there. A bit lower. But moving on from that, we've got, let's see if I can find her, Ulna. Now, Ulna's one I actually did like. I actually did like when I first saw it. Just the 30, the 60 just seems pretty pointless, but you're just more doing it for the stats on Ulna if you go past 30. Is that the general assumption?
Yeah, there's a lot of stages where Ulna, she'll get her immunity off the first time, and then she'll just kind of insta-die the second time. Sometimes the enemy just has too much damage, even though she's a very tanky character. So your E30 is just, your E30 or anything above, it's just going to let her trigger her immunity twice, because in some cases she doesn't.
Yeah.
Most of the time she is going to, but there are some scenarios where she just does not do it enough.
And obviously when you like, and because her main friend is going to be Grizzle, and so they actually synergize really well in the fact that like she gets that first immunity to help Grizzle get his skeletons out, and then his skeletons being out normally can help Ulna survive because they distract the enemy team. I just feel like that synergy between those two is just so powerful. But yeah, I definitely think, you've put her in that sort of mid tier because she's a great hero who, any benefit is nice, but in the current way she's used, it's not like a necessity at all.
No, not at all. It's a nice boost to, again, a nice character, but you're going to buff her in some scenarios and not every scenario.
Yep, 100%. All right, so I reckon this next one we go through a rapid fire one for the bossing side of things, and then we'll go a bit more in depth into the spice ones because they're more of the fun ones. But for bossing, we got twins. Obviously,
twins,
just number increase.
Very good.
You go.
Number increase. The engraving actually has some really nice haste stats. You make them link faster, make them ult faster, ult more consistently, more boss damage. Very simple, easy. It's not for campaign.
Yep, 100%. And then we have Mortis. And obviously we're just looking at heroes that are just good in bosses anyway, and that's pretty much the effect we're getting. But yeah, go through Mortis quickly.
It's the same thing. He's got good haste on his engraving stats. Means he gets ult faster, ult more often. In some areas where he'll like die early, you get the extra haste, and then that can be applicable both in campaign and there. But it's just haste.
And these boss ones, like this is for like massive end game whaling type territory. I just don't think, personally, let me know if you think the same. This is just my thought on AFK Arena. I feel like bosses aren't incentivized enough to make it worth it. I would love it if there was more of an incentive to build boss heroes. Do you agree with that, or do you think that's wrong?
It kind of depends on what perspective you look at, because there's some people, specifically there's a person named JD in the official Discord,
Yep.
who has been a very big advocate of cramming your resonating crystal. It's something that we've seen and heard a lot. But with things like Cursed Realm and the value of things you get from Cursed Realm and other things like that, if you focus on these bossing heroes, Twisted, all that stuff,
Yeah.
and just have base levels, you're going to be able to push campaign at a very similar rate to someone who's going to do all this campaign investment. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like so it's kind of a matter of, do you push campaign to then get more resources there, or do you push your RC to then like somehow get campaign value out of it?
Yeah. See, I think for me personally, and this is more of a personal bias, I just hate the tree. Like, I absolutely hate it. I think it's the biggest waste. Like, it's pointless. And like, it's just not a fun mechanic. You know what I mean? Like your incentive in bosses is to increase the tree of your levels and get broad stat increases, but I don't find it adds any value to gameplay. Do you share that, or you think that's wrong?
No, I think that is right. Tree has historically just been kind of a big power increase. There's some like cool uses of some of the skill effects on the tree, but in general, it's something they did to get a lot of value out of whales, because it's a pretty hefty cash investment. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of stuck around.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's also a reflection, and like my statement probably wrong for some players as well, who like to absolutely min max in that sense that you were saying. But for my personal style of play, where I want to do what's fun, I don't feel like the boss incentives there, except for that just straight stat stuff, which I personally don't enjoy as much. But everyone does stuff different. The next one we're going to look at is going to be the Lawson. Shoot.
Same thing. It's just haste stats. In PvP, it's also pretty nice, because if you get a linked enemy to die, you're going to stun the other one for 7 seconds, which is just ridiculous.
Yep.
It's also somewhat relevant in Thorn and Cheesing campaign, but in general, it's just faster haste on bosses.
Yep, that's what I thought when I first saw him. I was like, this could actually be a really nice PvP addition, because he is used in a lot of burst comps in PvP, and I'm like, that 7 second stun could actually be really clutch in some sort of situations. But yeah, definitely, obviously, the standard stuff. So then we move on to Aziz. If I can find him, there he is, the man. Once again, same thing.
It's extra stats, extra haste. It's mostly that way he doesn't die on some bosses, but yeah, it's nothing special.
Bit of extra energy, and that's pretty much the gist of that one. And then Entendre. So talk me through Entendre, because I haven't actually covered Entendre with bossing and stuff like that. So we'll spend a little bit of time on Entendre.
So Entendre in general has more recently kind of slowly shown herself as a bossing hero. If you're looking at your Burning Brute in your Twisted Realm, as well as some other bosses, Abyssal Expedition, she has proven herself as kind of your primary damage source pairing with the Grizzle. She just has pretty good scaling, pretty good damage. Her +9 furniture has a really strong effect that people are finally able to make use of, where her damage increases by like 50% or something ridiculous.
Yep.
Yeah, she does a whole lot more. Yeah, what is it, 70 energy per second whenever she gets her effect going. It's just so much damage and so much also attack increase in energy onto the rest of your team that the engraving just helps her do more of it.
Yep, 100%. All right, so now we get into the fun space of my brother's dog's here, and he's just going absolutely ham. I don't know if you can hear that. But the next one you've listed as spice. So these are ones that are like, I feel like there's multiple categories here. Ones that are just cool and niche and have a good effect, or ones that you personally think are moving towards meta. Is that be a safe way to say this next group of heroes? Yeah. All right, so the first one.
Some that are just
go.
Yeah, there's some that are just kind of like fun, cool. Oh yeah, this could be kind of cool in some occasions, and some that I think are really good but just aren't evaluated as highly yet.
Yep, sick. Need more testing. So the first one is my girl Mishka, best hero in the game, hands down, without a doubt. You told me she is the best hero in the game, so I'm happy with that.
Did not say the fact.
Just kidding. But yeah, what's your vibe on Mishka? Hit me up.
First of all, Mishka as a whole, she is a stellar hero. Vulcan may say it as a joke, but she is really good. Like, she is probably in your top 5 strength heroes. She is probably in your top 15, 20 in the entire game. She is really good. Build into her if you can. Her +9 furniture is ridiculous. Her signature item is strong, 20 and 9. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Her engraving specifically, she herself is obviously a tank. She's a CC tank, but at the same time, she does need to mitigate damage, especially early on into the fight. So the extra base stats just keep her alive more. And then her E60 specifically is going to heal and shield your entire team, which not only gives her use in bossing as a semi-healer option, but also in campaign with just kind of all your other random heroes. It helps you avoid a lot of random poke damage, can maybe immune an ability or two that would kill someone.
Yeah.
Seems pretty good into like Pharaoh spirits or something that are attacking your team. She's just a great hero with an effect that I think is going to end up being in your, probably not your top tier, but right below it.
Yeah, of top tier like tank supports. Like I just noticed, and I spoke about this yesterday. Like in testing her on Kiasma's account, she can sometimes substitute for an Ulna in a Grizzle team because, especially if you can get one of her wolves to die instantly, she gets an instant AoE CC, which buys Grizzle that time. Then she's going to put a shield on him, so she's buying sort of 7 to 8 seconds of time for Grizzle between the stun and then the time it takes the shield. Which can actually just get him ramped up. And then she's also quite chunky once she gets there. So she can actually survive a fair way into the battle and get multiple ults off and just keep buying that time, especially if you have a well-built team behind it. But yeah, that's my personal vibe. But I'm always going to try and make her work because I just love the character. And I love the wolves. But because I'm just talking about Mishka now because I like Mishka, like this was something my thought from the start when I saw her is that she's a little bit clunky in that, you know, you can get extra really nice damage out of her at 10% of enemies max HP. If your wolves are alive and biting them, you get the extra CC if the wolves are alive and biting them, but you also kind of want the wolves to die so that you can ult early. So she's kind of clunky in that, like, she's got 2 different ways she can work, but you know it's like the 2 ways don't synergize with each other. You've got to lose one to gain the other, is the interesting thing I found. And in some testing with her, it's like, you know, you got the start you wanted because the wolves died and you got your ult off, but then you end up like 1v1 against a Thorin and you can't deal any damage because you don't have that HP scaling damage. There's just a lot of interesting give and take in her kit. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's a lot of give and take. At the same time, I think it's a really good option of a give and take because unlike a character with like your Thorin, where like engraving him is a super downside, her options, like her different ways of play, are actually synergistic and built into her kit.
Yeah.
You can choose to do the extra damage, but it doesn't usually hurt her if you do the extra damage. You can choose to have your wolves die, but it doesn't really hurt. It just gives you a different choice.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm a big Mishka fan, so we'll move on so I don't spend another hour on Mishka. But next one is hayless. If I can find the dude, how do you say that name? Because I have no idea. But I say most of the names wrong, so I don't really give a shit. But tell me how you say it.
I say hayless too.
Hayless, yeah, okay, sick. All right, so his one has a really cool synergy with Mishka. So take it away.
Yeah, so this is one that I looked at specifically just because the character is new. He started showing himself in a lot of bossing. So I thought that his engraving was actually pretty cool. First of all, he himself boosts the shield values of a lot of your allies. I think it's by what, 20% or something.
Yeah.
And then whenever any allies are shielded, they're going to get a mini call type effect. It only works for 300 energy, so it's only going to work for like your maybe first 30 seconds, or I think it's like your first 25 seconds or so into the battle.
Yeah.
But hayless doesn't cap. His not capping is about an ultimate and a half. I think it's 1,360 energy or so from what I mathed it out from when it would start applying.
Yep.
So he's going to get about an ult worth out of just that. But if you think of it as a second call, then it looks a lot better.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And it's not just himself. You get your allies up that fast, like you said with Mishka. Mishka's going to apply a shield to all allies. Your Grizzle is going to have shielding. It's a lot of good characters right now have a bit of shielding.
Gorvo as well.
I do need to test. Yeah, I do need to test if it works with something like an artifact shield. Like if you look at like your waistband shield on like your tanks or your shroud shield on your like Lucretia. So there could be even more because it does say any kind of shield.
Actually,
but
that's
no matter
interesting.
what, yeah, no matter what, it's already at least good, and it could be a lot better. The issue is, hayless is a pretty expensive character to invest into, as well as an E6 very expensive.
Yeah.
So it's something that might rise on more of a whale end, but still be kind of less attainable for your free-to-play and low spender side.
Because he's still not getting into the top. Like he's not getting into that top sort of. Like he's definitely like nowhere near getting towards Lucretia and Ulna type investment priority. But you know he might be down there in like 5, 6, 7. I don't know where you've placed him, or it's not been long enough.
It hasn't been long enough, but in general, he's kind of looking like he's going to be one of those options that come after you've got like Mortis, Mahira, and Khazad done. He's going to be kind of like where you'd choose half and kind of other heroes similar to them.
Yep, sweet.
But, yeah, could change in the future.
Definitely. All right, so next one, and we were talking about this before, and you said you've noticed it from what I do. Like, Gorvo is my go-to niche pick in any team that I'm struggling with. I will always throw Gorvo in and try him because he's just really thick and disruptive. But take me through his engravings.
So his E60 isn't super duper relevant. I believe it's just an extra shield value, which is nice. Gorvo uses a lot of shields, but in general, the cool spot is the E30, as well as I believe he has some haste on his engravings. I can't verify it. I totally haven't engraved it myself.
CDR, but he'll have some haste in the tree.
Yeah, in the actual stats. Yeah, that's more so what I was looking at. But in general, even if he doesn't have a whole ton of haste, his base hit is super nice. And the E30 increases his damage mitigation whenever he charges his hammer, which is actually pretty consistent. Unfortunately, it does only last 8 seconds, which is, I'd say, probably the only downside.
Yeah.
But even then, Gorvo's a character who's probably going to get 1-2 hammer slams off pretty consistently. I don't think I've ever seen 3, but maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, because they cap it at 3, but I never thought he'd be getting 3 hammer smashes in 8 seconds. Without like a twins type buff.
Yeah, it would definitely be much better if it was some kind of permanent buff, like maybe he'd just get like a nice 24% damage mitigation. But even then, he's just a cool character. He's got one of those cool niche engravings that's just fun.
Yeah.
It's definitely not something you're going to be focusing if you're trying to min-max. But if you're looking to have fun, you're looking to enjoy the game a bit, he's definitely someone to look at.
100%. I think there's going to be some people that are happy about this one. I know there's some people that really love the furries, so let's talk about Kaz.
Kaz, as soon as we saw it, we all knew there'd be this like little cool niche. The E30 is the big spot. It reduces her dodge ability down to 6 seconds compared to
which is a big decrease. Which is a decent decrease when you're looking at 20% of the time for complete mitigation. Like when I saw that, I'm like, that's actually a nice buff.
Yeah, that is a lot of dodging, and given that it dodges magical damage, it is the only thing in the game to dodge magical damage besides Ezio, so it does have that really cool niche. But at the same time, it's still Kaz. You still have to have her in your team to make that happen, which can kind of be a downside, but it is fun.
Yeah. And then just the stupid in like stacking with the 60 just looked like fun as well. But like it's the kind of one that no one's going to build it unless you're one of the Kaz people, and then the Kaz people can rejoice. So I think it was a notable mention in there to let the furries have their way. But that is going to be
Kaz players rejoice. You've got another cool niche. It's just not good.
Yeah. Next up, we do have Isabella. Now, I'm a big fan of Isabella. Unfortunately, her damage just doesn't get up there. But I feel like Isabella in general is like in this awkward place where in all the random ones, like the Arena of Trials and stuff like that, she absolutely dominates because it's not scaled too bad. And there's not properly formed teams. I feel like in stuff like that and like the PvP events we have, Bob and stuff like that, she's incredibly powerful. But besides that, she doesn't work in PvP because she's really easily countered, and she doesn't work in campaign because she doesn't have enough damage. Is that your general feel on Isabella?
Yeah, she's a character who is kind of designed to be a damage-based, like semi-CC, but energy stealing, just a good character. But the issue is they didn't give her any of the tools that any of the like current campaign carries have, like percent-based damage or like really high scaling. She just casts stuff really fast and does damage really quickly, as well as her energy steal makes her ult ridiculously fast. That is still one of the stupidest abilities in this game.
So, can I just say, some of the best animations on Isabella as well. Like the ult animation is so good, but like, yeah, I agree with you. I wish like they had like some percentage max health damage tied into her ult or something like that. I feel like it would just add that little extra aspect, but I still think she'd be lacking a bit. But what's your vibe on the actual engraving itself?
The engraving itself, it's a pretty cool niche. I believe her E30 lets her like steal crit or something really weird where
Yeah.
like it takes away enemies' damage, and then I believe her E60 has something to do with like just increasing her attack speed by a stupid ridiculous amount and
Yeah.
her damage.
Yeah.
And her casting
her
speed.
casting speed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it stacks up by 5 times, and it's a permanent buff, which is pretty significant. But again, she doesn't have the damage to make use of any of her high speed. She doesn't have any other good buffs that work with it.
Yeah. And Isabella's one of those ones, she's already had a rework. I really hope they revisit her because I just think she's such a cool character. And a lot of people do actually like Isabella. She's just not quite viable. So she's one of those ones as well. You know, if she does get just a bit of a tweak and becomes relevant, then I think her engravings would become really relevant because they're actually really solid on the hero. It's just that the hero isn't quite there. All right, next up, let's go to the man. Get a whiskey, Forks.
Fox is such a cool character, but he's just not good. He's just got like a bad tossy banish. He just has all the things that look right but go wrong.
He was good. He was good back in the day when like campaign limit was like chapter 24 and Lightbearers was the meta. He was like the man back there.
He was pretty cool when his coffin was like one of the only few relevant CCs in the game. But now that other characters have been released and buffed and changed, he just has really fallen off. Please rework Fox, Lilith. But besides that, his coffin, his immediate coffin off his E30, like it triggers right away. It's pretty cool. Like it's an effect that can sometimes be really nice. I believe I've seen it coffin floras at the start of battles and other like weird things. So it's definitely like not the worst thing in the world. The issue is you have to have Fox on your team to use it. So it can kind of be a pretty big downside there.
Yeah, it sounds like one of the ones like a niche end game type thing. Get it to 30, and then you might find that one stage where it actually clutches you a victory because of that instant CC capacity.
Get it to E30, and maybe one day you'll have a whale who begs you to merc it from you.
Well put. Well put. All right, next up, Khazad, the Iceman.
Iceman, it's primarily his E30 that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You get extra CC on him, which is then going to also be extended.
By Signtron.
It's just cool. It's just nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be really good if you're fighting like an enemy Scrag or something who you have to keep locked down to keep your CC going.
I feel like Khazad's one of those ones. If you've built a Khazad to Ascended, you may as well take him to 30. That's the vibe I get on him. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of people who build Khazad, it's either the whales who've got the resources and have done other things, or it's like someone who's like building Khazad as like one of their main units that they're stargazing for. And I feel like once you get him there, you may as well just take him to 30. It's not a heap of investment, and you probably don't have everything else built to prioritize. So that's the way I sort of think about Khazad.
Yeah, that's a big if you're going to like full Ascended. A lot of the people who are going to min-max are going to put them to just Mythic.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because like a lot of people won't even have that option. But if you do, and like he's your man, just go for it because it's a nice little buff to him.
Just do it. He's cool.
Yeah, I've always liked Khazad. He's got a pet that's always a win on my side. Next up, we have another hero that I really do like. It just feels a bit squishy in general, and that's Hodgkin.
Yeah, Hodgkin is actually a pretty solid hero for campaign. He's not like a staple every team, but he's someone who subs in pretty often to your Lucretia or your Grez sets.
I feel
like a lot of cool abilities.
I feel like he's a back row tank. I feel like every time I try him front row, he just dies instantly.
He is. He is a back row tank. You use him a lot for getting his flag down. Sometimes his ult's also pretty nice.
Yeah, the ult's really good because that's a full board fear no matter where he's at.
Yeah, his kit has a lot of text, and a lot of it's actually pretty good text. His E30, I think, however, is pretty weak. I think it's just like a small stat buff. His E60 is where all the little cool niche power comes from. Where instead of having to like do nothing for 3 seconds to channel a block, he just like immediately kind of like Kelfer retaliates at an enemy.
Yeah,
pretty nice for letting him keep up all the skill rotations.
Yep, 100%. And like I said, he's just one of those ones that's like a cool hero that I really like, but I just feel like he's missing something in his kit. to bring him up the top. I feel like if he had a bit more base tankiness or, you know, some sort of passive that gave him some front row tank viability, I feel like he'd be right up there. But at the moment, you have to use him as back row tank, which means you have to put something in front of him, which sort of limits your options on what you can really do with him.
Yep.
Moving on from that, let's go to Rosaline.
Yeah, Rosa specifically, it's neither of her abilities that are super relevant, but she gets a lot of haste from her her engraving base stats, both from the upgrades and from the tree. She gets a ton of haste. I think it's the highest out of anyone in the game.
Yep.
So her getting more haste can be pretty good in your like Mahira charm sets and everything else. So she's just a pretty good character who's seeing a lot of use right now. So her engraving can be pretty nice for that reason.
Yep.
At the same time, you're investing into a support, so there's kind of that little downside. But it's not really that bad. It could be kind of put into that area of your middle end, just because she's a good enough hero.
Yeah. Okay, and we got one more hero that we're going to look at, and this one makes me a bit salty because, like, on Arty's list, he's labeled this one as poor, and there's one hero, and it's my girl Gwyneth. Take it away.
Gwyneth is cool. Gwyneth is a fun hero, but I'm going to say it time and time again. She's just not good.
Yeah.
If you're looking to have fun, she's a good character. Her E30 is really nice. Increase your stun by a lot. It's kind of like a thing that has been echoed again and again. Good character, not a very good character. Good engraving, just kind of a good, fun way to play the game. But people, please do not invest in her if you're trying to be competitive. If you're trying to go and try and min-max, don't do it.
Yes, do it for the fun. But like we were talking about this earlier, it's like similar to a Krenn type of thing where like her E30 seems really nice. It's like you can actually chain stuns. So like with her E30, if you keep proccing lightning arrows, they don't actually get out of it when you've got enough haste. The problem is kind of like Krenn, where there's just so many things in the game that can break out of CC and then you just lose the match because of that. And that's sort of like putting Gwyneth in this bad spot. Whereas when she first sort of came out, she was incredibly meta. And if like this was around back then, she would have just absolutely dominated. But sort of the meta has just evolved completely past her now at this stage. Is that your general vibe?
Yeah. Give her like an enemy Sylas who has a half second to ult, and your entire team vanishes. There's just too much leeway. She just isn't strong enough into the enemies in the game and with the current allies to do enough. But at the time, this would have been fantastic. If this was like her plus 30 signature item, like top 5.
Yeah, 100% back in the day. And what about for PvP, for like a budget PvP team? Would you say this is a viability? Like if you don't have like
I would generally
what's your current go-to burst comp with Zapharel?
Yeah, your meta burst is gonna be like a Zapharel and a Zolrath version, specifically without Iron. Otherwise, if you're budgeting down, you're gonna have Iron, and then if you're going even further, you're gonna cut like your Zaph for your Gwyn.
Yeah.
Specifically, if you're going into budget PvP, I don't think you want the engraving specifically because Gwyn is there more so for damage than CC. CC's a nice add-on, but she's there primarily.
You're only killing shit in a couple seconds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Well, what did she actually get from her engraving? Was she one of those shit ones? No, she gets crit damage amplification, which ain't too bad either. But that is going to be the last one. Anything else you want to mention before we cut it, Arty? How long have we been? Holy shit, we've been here for 53 minutes. That's a long-ass video. Enjoy, anyone still watching. But yeah, anything else you want to say before we duck off?
Mishka's OP. This character is fantastic. Please use her. She's fun. Some artist make fan art of her. Send it to me. I will use it as my profile picture.
100%. Mishka OP. That's all you got to get out of this one. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this one. Maybe have you worked on a tier list for this stuff? Because
I'm looking at. Sorry, I'm looking at a few things. There's a couple of guides I'm kind of like in the slow process of, but work has been a lot. I'm getting there. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to come out pretty soon.
Yeah, I might do like a more of a condensed priorities list and get that out because I feel like we ended up talking a lot, but we will get around to that. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.